Okay, before we finish with this unit, there are two other commit tricks that I really want to tell you about. And to really explain them, we have to set up the following scenario. We want to have two branches, one that is intended for a short-term project, maybe a specific bug fix or a feature addition, and then a long-term branch that is intended for ongoing work, maybe a new major release or something else like that. So let's go ahead and make those two branches. We'll start by using git switch with -c to create the long-term branch. Since it's the same as main, we can bounce right off of that to make short-term as well. And then we'll git switch back to main. So as I said, the idea is one of our branches here is for ongoing work on a long format. It won't be merged into main directly for a long time. But what if during that work something important was fixed that main absolutely needs? We don't want to merge everything that they're doing inside of main, but we do want that specific commit. And if we're being careful with our commits, being very isolated with the changes that we make during our commits, that is something that we can do. So let's show you with a switch over to the long-term branch. Let's make some commits here inside of long-term to simulate that ongoing work. The start of something great to new feature.txt. We will add new feature.txt and commit that out. We will continue our work on new feature.txt. Continued commits. Now, here comes the fix. If we cat phase 2, you can see that we have steps 1 through 10, but we're programmers. How did we forget step 0? This is a massive error. We need to fix this issue. Now, you can do this in a text editor, or if you want to be really cool, you can use the sed command we have here in the text. What this does is it substitutes the step 1 line with step 0, new line, step 1, and then the /m is for multi-line. And so let's see what happens. We cat phase 2. You can see that we actually made it happen. There's step 0 and step 1. That was a little goofy, but I wanted an excuse to use sed. Okay, so we now have a new change. Let's commit that. How do we forget step 0? Cool. By the way, if you like that sed command, you want to know more about how to do stuff like that, you might be interested in our Intro to Regular Expressions course. So we want that specific fix in main. We don't want anything else in long term. How do we make that happen? Well, we're going to need that commit ID, so we can get that with git log, and we can do one line, and we can also do -n1 to limit the number of log items we see to 1. Pretty handy. And we just want to get this most recent hash. Then we will git switch to main. Here comes the magic. We're going to run git cherry pick. Not a joke. That is actually the command. Git cherry pick and then the commit hash. What that does is it grabs a specific commit and applies the changes from that commit directly onto the working tree. Notice that we didn't get a prompt for a message. It used the commit message itself. We look at git log, one line, and graph now. You can see that over on short term, we have merge branch trouble. That's the most recent thing that it had. But over here in main, we have how did we forget step 0. But notice that it doesn't look like a merge. It just is the most recent commit. But notice that we don't have new feature.txt. It was just that file that was changed in that commit. If we had been a little sloppier with our commit and changes to new feature.txt had been introduced, that would have been part of the cherry pick as well. Another reason why you want your commits to be as isolated as possible. I will also mention that git cherry pick can take as many commit hashes as you give it in order, but I would be very careful with doing so. If you're adding a bunch of commits using git cherry pick, odds are you're probably better off with a merge. Okay, now let's head over to our short-term branch and do some work here. We will change experiment.txt into a feature. We're going to stabilize this thing with git mv. Experiment.txt, we're going to move it to feature.txt. Finally getting a chance to use git mv. And if we look at git status for that, you can see that it shows us renamed. Very handy. That's why we use the git mv and git rm commands when these are files that Git is tracking. We'll commit that change, and we'll just add some additional work there. Perfect. Now, this branch is behind main, thanks to our cherry-picked commit, but it's also ahead of main because of the changes we just introduced. Let's take a look at git log from the short-term perspective. Notice that it doesn't show us what happened on main. And that's because main has commits that we can't get to. By default, it'll only show common commits across everything that it can see. But we can actually give git log branches to compare. So if we do git log main and short term, things look a little bit different. You can see now that I've got this jutting off branch for main here with how did we forget step 0, which was absent from our original git log here. But now it's showing it to us. And remember that in git log, the leftmost branch is always going to be the one we're currently on. So right now, reality is about short term and everything else is branches, which is why we see main like this. At this point, we have two options. Of course, we could merge main into short term. That works, but think about the story that we want to tell, because later we'll be merging short term back into main. And you may want to represent that as a unidirectional flow, main being the source of truth and bringing things into it, as opposed to main getting sent other places. We also might want to think about the changes we're introducing in short term as things that happen after the main commits, if that makes sense. That is what rebase is all about. What rebase will do is take all of our branches commits and put them after the commits of the branch we're going to rebase on, meaning that the commits from our rebase target become the prior commits to everything we're going to add after. Let's see it in action with git rebase main. Now let's rerun this log command. Look how different that looks. You can see that now we have how did we forget step 0, but notice that it's not a branch at all. It's part of our commit history, but also notice that our commits have been added directly after those in the history. So it's not represented as a merge. It's represented as, no, these changes happened first, then our branch changes happened afterward. If that's what you want to express, then git rebase is the way to go. And that does it for Unit 2, talking about possibilities, moving between branches, merging, resolving merge conflicts, and even doing some pretty cool stuff like cherry picking and rebasing. Of course, these are basics, but these are the mechanics that you want to practice on to be comfortable using Git for project management. In the next unit, we're going to talk a little bit about collaborating with others and finally introduce GitHub into the conversation. We'll see you there.